Hey guys, I'm Matt. Welcome back to my Sandbox channel. I'm doing historical progression in Kerbal Space Program, and what I'm launching here is an Agena target vehicle on my version of an Atlas rocket, and it seems to be hideously overpowered because I'm using the FASA mod, but I've only got the Gemini pack on, which means I've lost the Atlas booster, which came along with the Mercury mission pack. So I've had to make my own out of the central stack from the Titan rocket and some KW Rocketry side boosters. But it looks okay, and it does have the method for disattaching those two side boosters, which in the original Atlas vehicle were liquid fuel based. This is solid fuel based, but it's neither here nor there. And they're gone, so it's a pretty stock Atlas Agena launch vehicle at the moment. And the important part is the Agena on top. The Agena target vehicle is basically just a Lockheed Agena stage, which has been modified with a docking adapter. And these were used, well, these were used a lot. Like, what is it? 360 were launched between like the 1950s and the 1980s, late 1980s. They were prepared as a space shuttle payload so that the space shuttle could take stuff up, and the Agena would end up taking that on into higher, maybe even geocentric orbits. So yeah, it's a pretty slick launch actually. It's going up quite clean. The KW Rocketry parts are blending in quite well with the FASA mod because they're both semi-realistic looking. Obviously, the FASA mod is amazingly realistic looking. But the Agena stage, seeing as I'm gonna be launching that for a few minutes, let's talk about it. It was used basically as a payload launcher. It used to be able to put another bit on top, and that would be an upper stage, an orbital stage, because it had RCS engines and a restartable rocket fuel engine. But as well, they used material racks inside it so that the actual payload could be the Agena vehicle, and the Agena vehicle provided telemetry data and all the things that a satellite wouldn't need. So it was like a one-size-fits-all satellite, and we're just about to detach it now. As that engine's burnt out, we're left now with just the Agena stage. And let's just clear it a bit with the RCS and get rid of the nose cone. So here we go. This is the Agena with my nice sandbox flag on the side, and ooh, that was a very powerful engine, and that's not a very good orbit at all because I have to try and rendezvous with this at the moment. So let's just pitch this way below the horizon and give it a burn, and that should help to circularize the orbit around where I am at the moment, which is already up to 100,000. That's getting very high very quickly. So yeah, the closer to the planet you burn downwards, the more you should stretch the orbit around the planet. It's not happening very fast though, and I'm using the liquid fuel engine on the Agena at the moment. Okay. My biggest issue at the moment is trying to circularize so that we don't burn up. So I'm gonna go up to the highest point of my orbit and just burn to circularize. We can do something about the altitude when we're at the lowest point of the orbit. We can burn retrograde, and that should bring it down in a much more efficient way than what I'm doing at the moment. At this point of recording, I didn't have remote tech on. I'm using remote tech in my career mode playthrough at the moment, so I'm quite fortunate really because this would have screwed me because I'm just coming around the dark side of the planet and I'm not having any connection with the Kerbal Space Center at the moment. But okay, we've got an actual orbit here. It's not circular, which will make rendezvous incredibly difficult. So I'm going to have to play with that a little bit. Let's just extend the antenna. Okay, we'll bring it round to try and fix this orbit. The important thing is getting a circular orbit. It doesn't necessarily matter how high it is. Obviously, the closer to the planet, the easier it's going to be for the fuel of the Gemini vehicle that's coming up after this. But, I mean, as long as it's circular, it means you can plan the rendezvous a lot better. So, yeah, the Agenas were notoriously unreliable. The first one pretty much exploded. they went up and weren't in the right altitude. Then the Atlas vehicles they were on went lopsided and span out of control. Sometimes the nose cone didn't detach, so there was no way of actually docking with it when you found it. There were so many things that went wrong with these, but as an actual launch vehicle, they were fine. It was just the docking adapter versions that seemed to have so many problems because they were required to be fully functional spacecraft. And for example, I think on Gemini, what will be Gemini 8, maybe? When they were docked, they used this to boost it to a higher altitude. So it was actually one fully functioning complete spacecraft with a Mercury capsule at one point. Okay, so that's pretty much circularizing it now. So yeah, this is what it looks like. Hopefully, when I launch my Gemini spacecraft, they should both come together like this. If you want to see the Gemini schematics, you can check out my previous video when I did the spacewalk. But yeah, this is how it comes together. It was a very, very capable liquid fuel engine, basically, with a docking adapter and a lot of telemetry data. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I can start planning for. There we go. When you see the apoapsis and periapsis moving about like that, it means that they're pretty much on the level. And because this has got a lot of RCS, you can use the RCS to just fine tune everything. So here it is in orbit with my nice sandbox flag on the side. So, very interesting. I've got a lot of fuel left. That probably overkilled it with the Atlas stage at the beginning. But yeah, before we just cut into the Gemini stage, I'd just like to thank a few guys for helping me out. These guys are responsible for bringing this video to you, and I'm really glad they're helping me out so much. They're pledging at least $5 per video I do, and they can pledge for as little as $1 US, which means that it's not that much really, is it? It's going to make a big difference to me though. And you can check out the goals to see exactly where that money's going. Everything that goes into the pot on Patreon is going to come straight out into the channel in terms of quicker internet for better uploads, or it's going to help me to back down my hours in my job, meaning I can give more time to YouTube. And that'll mean more videos in more games, and hopefully a better channel for all you guys. So if you could head over and check it out, it'd help me a lot. Just have a look. Maybe if you feel you can help me out, that would be amazing. So back on the launch pad, this time for a nighttime launch. I've gone straight back and loaded a Gemini vehicle. Let's get rid of the launch tower and throttling up. Okay, not throttling up enough clearly. And why isn't this launching now? I'm at full throttle. Okay, maybe I've clicked with the ground. Let's try that again. Okie dokie, so get rid of the tower and throttle up. Oh, but first of all, let's just check out that we're actually going to be rendezvousing. As you can see, like 9 hours have passed in Kerbal time, which meant that it was on the opposite side of the planet. Whereas in real life, they launched probably 90 minutes after the Agena target vehicle. So now the tower's gone, throttle up to full, and there should be no problems this time. And away it's gone. The Titan launcher flies away quite cleanly this time. Yeah, like I was saying, the real life they launched probably 90 minutes after. Because that meant they could just go up and just in one orbit clip with the Agena target vehicle, and they could use all that time for maneuvering to try and bring themselves closer because they were incredibly limited by the day and night cycles. That being said though, this wasn't a one mission process with Gemini. There were several Gemini missions that went up. Gemini 6 went first to try and rendezvous with an Agena target vehicle, but that Agena target vehicle never made it into orbit. So then they launched a Gemini 7 to meet up with that Gemini 6 Gemini vehicle that was in orbit for about 20 days. It just kept going round and round, and they scrubbed the launch pad and got Gemini 7 straight on and ready to launch. They met up together and didn't dock because they never were ready to dock two Geminis together. So what they did was they used their thrusters to try and maneuver within 30 centimeters of each other, and that allowed them to practice things like orbital mechanics, which they'd had problems with before. But they didn't quite understand how the orbital circles and ellipses worked, and that you didn't necessarily have to boost towards your target to getting closer. They practiced all of that, just without a hard dock. And then Gemini 7 came back straight down after quite a short vehicle, and Gemini 6 went for an endurance mission. After Gemini 6 and 7 in their joint mission, there was Gemini 8 was the one that made the first hard dock with a Agena target vehicle, and it was in fact the first step of docking in any space program in history. So that's also a big one for me. It's the first time I've done it on my channel. I dock it all the time when I'm playing on my own. I'm just thinking this is the first time I've actually docked two things together on a video, actually, which is cool, I guess. And as you can see, the second stage engine of the Titan firing now. We just get rid of the launch tower. And I'm not paying too much attention to where the target is, except on the nav ball. Just trying to make sure that the prograde vector is lined up with where the target is. I don't think I'm going to get it in one orbit, but you know, the closer you can get, the less of a difficulty it is next time. And if it's ahead of you, make sure your orbit is slightly slower, slightly lower down. Sorry, closer to the planet, so that you can catch up with it. Because the closer you are to a body, the faster you're orbiting it. So you've got plenty of fuel left in this. So yeah, that's just going to keep burning and burning. So this mission is basically Gemini. Well, this one is Gemini 8. So this one, the crew, I think involved. Yes, it did involve Neil Armstrong, who was the actual flight controller, and it was his performance in Gemini 8 that made him one of the prime candidates for Apollo 11. Because Gemini 8 did not go without problems. First of all, when they docked, that was really difficult. It was something that Armstrong hadn't really tried before. And the difficulties he had up to docking, we don't know if that's necessarily him or whether that was due to the fact this was also an endurance mission and they'd been in space for a couple of hours and got in quite high G effects. So his body was pretty much shot by the time he got to the connection. And the problem is when they did their hard dock as well, there was a spin that was initiated due to a faulty thruster, which meant that they were basically redding and blacking out. They were alternating between the two. Like they were in one of the centrifuges testing for G effects. That was what was happening with the Agena target vehicle. They were right at the end of the pendulum and receiving so much high G that they had to just bail out of there and send the Agena target vehicle spinning away. A review later found out that it was a faulty thruster. And just get rid of the nose cone, which is important because they had an aerodynamic cap, which you can just about see me highlighting in green occasionally as my mouse flickers over it. The aerodynamic cap basically covered the locking mechanism on the docking adapter. Okay, and just speed past it. Went a bit slowly because I didn't want to smack it and cause a collision. Oh, but you can see that's where the closest rendezvous is going to be at this point. Sure, we can play with that a little bit just to get it closer. And let's take the Gemini vehicle away now, because we want the Titan upper stage to return. And the Gemini's got enough RCS and fuel to be able to do the rest of this by itself, but I just realised I've not actually filled it with fuel. I think I must have accidentally detweaked it in the VAB when I was building it. So I'm going to set up an orbital maneuver at the rendezvous point I'm at, just to try and see what I need to do to make myself connect. Okay, we can get a pretty close approach there with the target, so just going to play with it. It's like the orbital mechanics when you're trying to move between planets. It's very similar, like if you were seeing Kerbin as the sun and me moving to a different planet. It's the same, basically. So that looks pretty clean, and the difference here between like 20 kilometers is pretty much a single burst of RCS fuel. which can be quite annoying. But that's just how it is. You got to play around with it. And let's just advance time a bit. Okay, so now here I am. I'm at the closest point of the approach, and I've decided I'm going to do all of this within the cockpit view. So as you can see here, the beautifully modeled FASA interior of the Gemini capsule they have. And I'm just pointing myself with the nav ball at the bottom, because it's on target mode, and I'm burning to bring my relative velocity down as close as I can to zero. Which means that me and the Agena vehicle are pretty much just rotating without moving relative to each other. So let's spin around a bit to really bring that down. Okay, and you can see it's flicked over, so I'm actually approaching it now. But where? Where is it? We're still on the night side, which is going to make actually finding the Agena really quite difficult, but fortunately the nav ball does have a marker on it indicating where it is. And I can't actually make it out, but you know, it's over here somewhere, so let's just burn towards it, because we're still quite a way out. I'm going to use the main liquid fuel engines to actually get in close. Still can't really see. I'm hoping that the sun is going to come up soon, because otherwise this could be quite problematic. Don't you think so? Yes, he does. He's got the important job of making sure that the switches don't flick themselves. Okay. So why was this actually important for Gemini to do? Anybody who knows how the system went down for the Apollo missions realizes that it could not have worked unless they could dock the lunar module with the command module. They were launched in the same rocket stack, but they had to flip around and connect because of the way that they were arranged. And as well, when the astronauts were coming back up from the moon, they had to connect with the service module so that they could get back on because there was no re-entry capability for the lunar module. So that's what they had to do. And the Gemini, as well as I said in previous videos, they were planning on taking the Gemini all the way to the moon, which is why they tested it with the Agena vehicle to see if the Agena could be like a trans-lunar stage. But yeah, they decided to go with a complete new rocket vehicle, which they started developing about this time. They started looking into stuff like lunar landers. This was about the time Kennedy was starting to make a push for the moon. And on the front of the nose cone of the Gemini, I've deployed something called the docking guidance, which is basically just a giant metal rod that sticks out at 90 degrees, and it slots into the a kind of like nook in the docking part of the augmented target vehicle, the Agena target vehicle. I just advanced time a little bit so that we could get on the day side, so I could see where the hell it is. And as you can see a beautiful Kerbin swinging around. I can just see the silhouette of the Agena target vehicle. So now I'm switching to RCS completely. I'm not going to use my liquid fuel engines here because I haven't got enough retro-facing RCS to slow me down if I need it. So again, this is playing everything with the gimbal. You need to bring the yellow on top of the pink and keep yourself orientated towards the target. The yellow crosshairs was painted on the outside of the ship and was used to point towards targets. They had like a little crosshairs on the side of the Agena target vehicle that they overlapped with. But my problem here is that the ATV is rotated to where I am and I need to get in close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swing by and then I'm going to rotate to face. I'm just going to get in close first. And it's really like, using the SAS on this, it's really like moving a boat through water. There's a lot of seasickness and moving about, and it feels really, really fluid in this with the slow response of the RCS jets and stuff like that. It's very, very difficult, but incredibly It's quite a tactile thing, this FASA Mod Gemini capsule. It's quite easy to see where you're going and what you need to do. And this wasn't the entire point of the Gemini missions. The Gemini missions weren't just set up for the moon. There was a lot of really good science. I've said this in previous videos. They had cloud spectrometers, which allowed them to develop satellites in the future, which could measure cloud density, cloud distance, which allowed them to pick up on things like the actual position of the jet stream, as well as predicting weather cycles. All them little blobs you see on the weather report of like dark blue, dark green to indicate rainfall and stuff like that, that was all Gemini mission technology that was developed. So yeah, that was really, really good. And the ATV itself stayed up for a lot longer and was some ATVs were used for multiple missions. I think Apollo 10 visited 2 ATVs from various other Gemini missions. I think this one was one of them. It undocked from its first one and then went to its one. And I've just activated the light I've put on the nose cone, so that I was not sure whether I'd get like a night docking, so I put a light on the front of it. And you can see there the 90-degree stick just popping out on the front of my nose. The 90-degree stick on the ATV is the antenna. So now I'm lined up with the front of it. I'm just moving in and moving up with, again, all with thrusters. Got to get in close. So I'm pressing H on my keyboard with RCS on to bring me forward now. And it's a very, very slow process, but I can't really see where the notch is on that docking adapter. I think I should be lined up okay with it. Oopsie, okay. Little changes now make a big difference because I've not got a lot of forward momentum. Oh, I can see the notch now. Yeah, that's the notch directly at the 12 o'clock. But I'm way out, so I'm going to come down, okay, and then come to the right a little bit. And the kind of male and female adapter part of it should just bring it in together if you have enough forward velocity. Okay. And let things happen by themselves, and there we are. We're now connected. So that was quite easy for me. Quite hair-raising, but it wasn't as problematic, like I say, as the real Apollo Gemini 8 mission, which is at this point there was a problem, and the attitude system was not necessarily correct, so the Agena started to execute a program which spanned both of the ships 90 degrees to the right. A roll started, and then the fuel started to drop on the Gemini vehicle, so they could not necessarily get back. Then they basically just disconnected, and Armstrong fired away to get away from the Agena, which was spinning towards them like a boomerang. So, and then when they got away, without the Agena, Gemini's mass dropped, so the rate of spin increased on the Gemini, and that's when they started to black out. Because one of the thrusters that had been operated by the RCS the SAS on the Gemini was responding to the initial mass of the Agena. That's when that program had started, and then that was firing on its own. It had got stuck on, so that was only increasing the rate of spin for the Gemini 8. So yeah, they aborted the flight and they prepared for an emergency landing, because that was like the routine. If anything happened with any of the thrusters, they had to stop, because they were down to only like 25% fuel at that point as well in the RCS. So they basically went round for one orbit so that they could plan their re-entry nearer a dropout point. Because if they'd just gone in, they would have gone over land and they wouldn't have been able to recover the ship. And re-entry is the most difficult part, even after an emergency like what happened. The most difficult part is with the re-entry. For me, it should be nice and easy. I've just backed away gently from the Agena target vehicle, and I'm trying to go retrograde now, using small bursts with the Gemini. Because, as I said before, it moves about a lot, so if you use a lot of thrust, you're going to have to use a lot of thrust bringing it back because you've overshot your mark. So just swing vaguely round to the retrograde and full liquid engine away from the ATV. Yeah, I love this FASA mod, but I think from now on in Kerbal Space Program, on my historical progression series, that's gonna be it. I was only using it really for the two-person parts that came with the Gemini vehicle, because there's no two-person pods in Kerbal Space Program. But now I've done that, it's onwards and upwards to 3-people pods and Soyuz-based vehicles, and it's a complete different step in Soviet and American technology now. So FASA Mod, you've done as well. Thanks a lot to the developers. It's been great. But for me, I'm going back to stock and KW rocketry parts, I think. As I just get rid of the service module and the nose cone, which is going to reveal my parachutes. I say parachutes this time because I've included the drogue parachute. So down we come. I've got no RCS left on this now, so I'm just going to hope the atmosphere, yes it has, it's picked us up and should bring the bottom heavy spacecraft down correctly. On just a ballistic reentry, there's no control I have over this now. Oopsie, explosions. But that's good, it's re-entry, so as long as it's not my capsule exploding, that's all fine. And that's the drogue chute gone. So next video I'm going to be looking at different orbits, because I'm putting on my new install. I'm putting on in 64-bit the 24.2 version of Remote Tech, which is now working and supported. So I'm going to be putting that on, and I'm just going to show you a few different orbits with communication satellites that had been launched by this point in the 1960s. And then I'm probably going to have to just scrap them as I set up my nice new Remote Tech network. But I'm going to show you things like Molniya orbits, how to get an equatorial orbit, that kind of thing.
Hey guys, if you liked the video, remember to like and subscribe so you can help out the channel, and you can also get my newest videos whenever they're submitted. And if you like these amazing people, you can head over to Patreon and you can help on my channel from as little as 1 oost per video. And you can set monthly spending limits so it's never a problem. Thanks guys, see you later.